What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Who's Reality Cooking podcast. I'm so excited to have Mellisa Root from School of Chocolate with us here this week. Hey, Mellisa, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing so great. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. Are you in your office right now? The
Yes,
light
I
behind
am.
you is so cute.
Thanks. Yeah. I call it my little spot of joy. I even have another little one over on this side that says "Let's party," and it kind of adds some fun vibes to the office.
I like it. I like it. Is your office at home or at a restaurant? Where are you working out of
No.
right now?
This is my office. I'm working for a private club right now in Virginia, and so I'm interrupting my previously scheduled duties to join you. So yeah, so this is my little office. It's cute. I mean, I have to do something with this formica board, to dress it up. So I went with the ice cream cone.
Gotcha. Well, we won't keep you for too long when we know how busy you are. I just wanted to dig into the School of Chocolate.
Yeah.
And for anyone listening or watching, you can watch it on Netflix. It's a Netflix show. It's so different in that nobody ever gets eliminated. So, what I wanted to first find out about was what were you doing before the show? Because you had a really interesting story.
Yeah, so before the show, I mean, I was basically operating a restaurant with my husband. The show basically started to audition and things like that near the end of the pandemic. So we had just recently been shut down by the local government during that time because it was in the March period of everything that happened during the pandemic time. And fast forward a couple months, and we were still not able to reopen in Portland. So we got to the point where we knew that we were not going to reopen. We didn't get any PPP. So there's just, kind of a moment where you realize you're not coming back. And at that time, we also decided not to renew the lease in our condo in Portland because both of us were suddenly not working. So, in the time right before filming, both my husband and I were staying with my sister in law. Um, and I think that's probably what had let me kind of be available time wise when the call came in to even think about auditioning because I've never done a show before. I've never found the time to do something like that. And my work schedules, as a chef, it's very unforgiving, the time offs. It just caught me at a time where I was suddenly very available.
Well, what was that, the audition part like? What was that whole, getting to know the producers and interviewing and all of that?
So what was really interesting about it was I didn't reach out to them. They actually had my current sous chef, who's currently working for me right now, been contacted somehow, and he had kind of put in for the show. And in some of his discourse with them, he had said, they should really take a look at me. And so they reached out to me, and he called me and told me, and I was like, okay. So I entertained the first phone call, and they kind of said, I had my own very many misgivings because of just who I am as a person anyway, about kind of doing cooking reality shows. I remember they said something like, oh, for the best in chocolate. And I was like, the best in chocolate, like in the United States living? And they're like, yes. And so like I kind of knew in my head that it was going to be Amory, right? And they couldn't confirm. And so then they also said they wouldn't confirm that it was Netflix, but they said, it would be a name of a network that I would completely recognize. Ba bum bum. And I was like, okay, that's gotta be Netflix. So I thought, you got Henri Gouchon and you have Netflix, which is it's two pretty powerful combinations. And I said, okay, well, so then I took the next interview, and I feel like there might have been another interview. This is like 3 or 4 years ago now, so I might be fuzzy on some of the details, okay? And they would say make some video for us, and I remember thinking, I'm in my sister-in-law's house. I mean, I don't have the equipment. I don't have the ingredients. And what was really funny was the weekend that they wanted all this filming, my sister-in-law and her husband, they went camping. And I tell you, it was just serendipitous because they just sprayed open the kitchen and I didn't feel like I was infringing on that. They're the most gracious people anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered, right? But I just felt like, okay, it kind of aligned. I'll film these videos. I remember I do a plated dessert. I did something glazed. I remember that. And I did macarons for I don't remember why. And then they wanted a showpiece, which was also pretty hard, you know. I was in Boise now, is where my sister lives. And I had none of my equipment. Everything I owned was in storage. I had my suitcase and I don't have any of my vendors or any. So I remember like trying to order chocolate, contacting people, my old purveyors, and seeing if they would do a rush shipment of chocolate to me just so I could put up the showpiece. So there were quite a few little, I want to say, loops, I guess, to jump through. And honestly, I was pretty game with it all. I remember when I first talked to them about the show and what type of show it was, I was really interested to know um, kind of the format because it was kind of vague. Like, it's a competition, but it's not a competition. Like, everybody's going to learn. And I was like, okay, that's different. So then they were on the fence about if it was going to be elimination or not, which I was fine with. And then I remember speaking to the one guy who really made up my mind. And I said, listen, I've just survived the pandemic. Our industry has just survived probably the most horrific thing that I know. So many of us are out of work. I want to go be a part of something that's really positive. So is you're gonna film and it's gonna be like the British Bake Off where it's fun. I like watching the British Bake Off. It's light, it's airy, it's humorous. And granted, they're not all professionals, but you know, there's like this feeling of fun. If that's what this is going to be about, then I'm down. If it's going to be a lot of drama and negativity, I won't have anything to do with it because I just coming off of this travesty, you know, and that is not something that I want to be a part of. And he was like, no, it's totally going to be like the British Bake Off. We totally understand where the industry's at. It's going to be great. And I was like, okay, what do I have to lose? I'm literally in a guest bedroom. You know, like, what is going to stop me? And I thought, you know, so much in my life, there's been things that have popped up, and I've said no for this reason and no for this reason, and yes to many things too. But I've never been in that kind of mindset of just saying yes to things. And I thought, I should just say yes. Like, I should just say yes. So that's how that process went. And I got selected, and I feel like I think it was a really short window of time before they were like, get in the car and take the flight, and then we're gonna quarantine you in a hotel for a while, and then we're gonna film. And that's kind of how it went down.
Wow, wow. So, were you able to prepare? Did you prepare ahead of time? And what did that look like, especially since you were staying at a family member's home?
Yeah. So I don't remember. So my window. I know some of the other cast I think had kind of been interviewing for a lengthy time. I am pretty sure that my interviewing started near the end of August. And then I believe I got the we're going to go ahead in September at some point and you need to quarantine for 2 weeks in your house. And then you're gonna take your flight and then you're gonna quarantine. I don't know if it was a week or 2 weeks, I really can't remember, in California. And so there wasn't really a whole, they said you could bring 10 tools with you. So at that time, you know, we actually, in that time between the time of doing my interview and the time of getting the call, David had, my husband Chad, accepted a position in Colorado, and we had just moved to Colorado. So I was literally unpacking the house when I got the call. So I go find my pastry things and I take my 10 tools and pack my little bag and quarantine myself. And we had just moved to Breckenridge, so I would hike this little mountain behind me thinking about what I had just gotten myself into. and then go sit in my little house. It's easy to quarantine when you don't know anybody in a brand new spot, I tell you that. And then I remember packing my suitcase, and they wanted us to film ourselves like going to the airport. I remember that because it was like a blizzard in the car ride. I had to take the car to the airport, which was like an hour and a half, and it ended up taking 3 hours because of this big weird snowstorm. And then, yeah, then I ended up in California with my 10 tools and my couple. What was strange was it's so funny now that you stop to think about so many of the stuff that I kind of have just put out of my mind, but they didn't tell us that they were ever going to film us in normal clothes. I mean, I showed up in like black pants and these t-shirts that I was just planning to wear under my chef coat the whole time, right? And then they were like, "Oh, we want to see you in your street clothes," and a bunch of us were like, "What? We didn't get this memo. Everybody's been quarantining. Like nobody's bringing social clothes, you know." So I remember that little detail being kind of funny.
Wow. Wow. So you are in Colorado now, is that right?
No, now I'm in Virginia.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah. So after filming, it's really difficult in Breckenridge. In my opinion, it's very hard for a seasoned pastry chef to acquire a well-paying job in Breckenridge. And not only that, the altitude makes it very hard for what I do for a living anyway. And so I was searching for a position, and one of my old teammates, I did the Culinary Olympics back in 2008. Before that, I had done the World Cup in 2007. And one of my teammates who was on the World Cup with me, he's an executive chef. And he called me and he was like, "We're looking for a pastry chef. I want to design a whole new pastry program. We've got this new remodel." And so then I relocated out to Virginia. And then almost 8 months later, David was able to join. Yeah, it's been crazy. Since COVID, I swear my life has been crazy.
Oh gosh.
Like a
Yeah.
little roller coaster.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I definitely want to dig into what you're doing right now, but I kind of want to go through the show,
Sure.
just so that people who have watched or even who haven't watched can understand it a little bit better. One of my main questions that I almost always ask anybody in a pastry-based show, you guys all seem to know each other, or at least know of each other. It's such a small knit group. So when you showed up, did you know any of the castmates, or at least maybe know of them?
Okay, so when I showed up, apparently I had known two people who were in reserves. One that I had crossed paths with a lot in Caesar's Palace in Vegas. And so we didn't work in the same department, but we were both managers in different areas of Caesar's Palace, so we knew of each other. And so she didn't actually ever get the opportunity to film. And then there was another gentleman on reserves who said he totally knew me, and I just couldn't remember how. But then the only person on the actual cast that I did film with that I did know was Thiago. So I want to say 2012, maybe. Maybe I did a competition in New York for Star Chefs, and Tiago did it as well. And there was some real problems with equipment, the freezing and the ice cream machines, and during the prep time. And all the other competitors left overnight, and it was just me and Tiago staying until the wee hours of the morning waiting for the engineer to come so that we could do our prep for the next day's competition part. Finally, we gave up and we used liquid nitrogen, and I never used it before. So Tiago, as a fellow competitor, was like, "Here, I'll show you how to use this liquid nitrogen." And I just remembered that him so well because of that, like taught me something I had never been exposed to at that point. And he's just such a nice person. And so when we saw each other, we were like, "Wait a minute, I recognize you." But that was the only person that I knew.
That is really cool. I love that the industry is, we all help each other out. I mean, even this
Yeah.
podcast is about helping all of you, each other out. And I love that you had that moment with him. And it felt like the show was such a positive, loving environment where everyone wanted to help each other and
Yeah.
wanted to learn and wanted to make friends. Did it feel like that to you as well?
I definitely think so. It was, we were always cheering for each other. And and listening to the critiques that each other got and being defensive for each other even sometimes, like there was, yeah. I mean, there were many times, and then we would go when we got to go eat in the little, I don't know, whatever area they would have called that afterwards. So we could actually taste the items, which in the first episode we didn't get to do that. And in the second or the third episode, we did, mostly because yours truly made a little bit of a stink, but we kind of collectively was like, we should be able to taste the food too, especially if there's being judging and a winner. Like we want to taste what the winners taste like, and we want to taste what you're not liking and stuff like that. So that came about very organically. That was never part of the producers' plans to, and then they just started to film it. And then as the series went on, then it definitely became a part of their plan. But we would be defensive for each other. Like we say, we don't know what they're saying, or sometimes we would be, agreeing with each other, and sometimes we would be hard on each other. Like, you're better than that. Or they would say, you're better than that. Like, well, you got to get out of your head, So I really felt like it was an environment where we were all rooting for each other. And I think there were a couple reasons why that worked. One, they never, ever, ever explained how someone was going to win. And so you didn't know how anybody was going to win this competition. In the beginning, they did a number system where every time you made something, you were getting a score. Okay. And so throughout the process, I started to really pay attention to the numbers, and I was running a tally in my head about where my placement was at. Because I don't know if you caught on when, when watching me, but like I came to win. Like that's who I am as a competitor. The World Cup, the Olympics, I mean, everything about me and competing is that you are trying to win. So I was pretty distracted by that. I was distracted by the fact that it was very unclear as to what these numbers were going to mean. Just because you had the highest number didn't necessarily equate to you getting the best in class. So that was fuzzy. And so we would go to the holding room and we would talk about, how is this best in class? And if you win best in class, is that how you're going to win? Like if you have the most best in class. So that was really kind of a good theory that we had, was that if you have the most best in classes, you are going to win this whole overall thing. And it was a good prize. And I know other people were competitive too, because a lot of us were out of work, you know, a lot of us were in this position that we didn't know where our next job was going to come from. We didn't know how long the pandemic was going to go. Everybody was, for the most part, pretty competitive, So it was confusing about how you're going to win. It wasn't until I remember, for my own thought process and my own experience, when they announced, when I can't remember which episode it was, but do you remember when Amory said, we are adding to this prize package that if you win, you're going to teach a class at my school? Do you remember that?
I do remember that. I do, yeah.
And it was a couple episodes in, and I thought to myself, what? And then I remember going back to the holding room and, telling Tiago, we don't have a chance. It's going to be Juan. Juan's going to win, because who in this room is going to go to Armory School and teach what? You're going to go teach pastry. I'm going to go teach chocolates and confections, or Juan is going to go teach vegan. So Armory doesn't do vegan food.
Yeah.
So I think, I think I just don't see it. So that was really kind of in my mind where I knew, I don't think I have a chance at this. And I really felt like, I can't remember which episode or which challenge it was where I thought, wow, we women are getting bulldozed over here, man. And we have got to, I remember in the holding room telling us, we ladies have got to get on the same page, or they're going to take it, and none of us wanted that, for sure. we wanted to represent females in the pastry world well as best as we could, you know.
Well, I love that you brought that up. And because one of my questions, and we're going to go ahead and jump ahead to it, is both about your competitiveness and about, wanting to own being a woman in this space. Feel free to push back on me on this, but I kind
Okay.
of felt like they were trying to make you out as a villain. Or if, say, for instance, you had won and Juan hadn't, I don't think they would have turned those tables on him. And so, as a woman watching this, and I loved the show, this was the one piece I didn't like, was that they kind of made you out to be too competitive, which is just BS. So I'd love to hear what that felt like, and more about, your progression through all of that on the show.
Yeah, so I mean, filming, I had absolute zero idea that I was the villain, for the lack of a better word, right? That came as a complete surprise to me. It didn't feel like that on the show at all, especially since we were all working really well with each other. I also think I definitely had a crafty edit for sure. In interviews, you know, you always wear the same outfit and they want to make sure that your hair is fixed the same way so they can, you know, every day after filming, you do this edit, but you have to look the same. And then they can kind of slice it up however they want. And there was definitely some, in my opinion, some crafty slicing. I was shocked to be really honest. I do think that if I would have won, I would have had maybe a more pleasant edit so that you were happy that I won. So I feel like I lucked out on that. I lucked out on that nice edit for sure. Um, I don't think I guess I can tell you a little bit about my experience. I'm gonna be me no matter what, right? Like I am competitive, I am driven. I really wanted to set myself up as or portray myself as someone who I am as a leader in the kitchen and who I am as a chef. And some of the show made that very difficult. You know, we didn't know it was going to be called School of Chocolate. It had no name when we started filming. They didn't release the name until much later. I remember when we filmed the first segment where we all walk into the kitchen and we're like, wow, this is amazing. And Henri came out and he was like, welcome, chefs. Okay. And then they didn't like that and we refilmed it. And we came back in and we looked up and everything was amazing. And then he said, welcome, students, or welcome, class, your students, or something. And I remember some of us like in the holding room afterwards kind of looking at each other like, yes, we are always students of the craft. Always. I am constantly learning. I will never learn everything. But this room is a group of people who build themselves as executive pastry chefs. So there was a little bit of an interesting dichotomy from the get-go. Okay. So I am a very black and white person. I don't operate in the gray. We talk about that sometimes here at work, you know, where there are some people who are just masterful at being in the gray. My mind does not work like that. Um, but I will say that I truly enjoyed the experience. I did better when things were clear. I would question when things were unclear, which probably didn't make me the most popular with production because I would, you know, say things like we need water, you know, like we filming for 16 hours, we need to be able to go to the bathroom and stuff like that. I wanted clear explanation of the rules and then I was going to go for it and the challenges. And sometimes I failed spectacularly, you know, like if I would have just maybe pulled back a little bit, I could have been successful in some of those things. But I believe that well, I now know I'm not everybody's cup of tea because I found out I was a villain from actually the internet. So when the show aired, it was Thanksgiving and I was swamped at work. And the 2 days after, we were going to build 300 plus gingerbread houses here to get ready for a big event. So I didn't get a chance to watch it. But the internet came for me like nobody's business, which was how I found out that I was actually the villain of this show that I had been excited. I mean, it was a year after we filmed it finally aired, and I was really looking forward to it. And it was pretty brutal actually. And I don't necessarily think that the punishment fits the crime, because I do believe all I did was try to compete and try to win. And I don't think that a lot of people like those qualities in a woman. And I don't necessarily only want to make it about man and woman and everything like that, but everybody who's messaged me horrible things, they've made me know, that a lot of it is that way. And that we're not quite ready as a society for really strong competitive women in apparently the pastry industry. It was a huge learning experience. I did not anticipate any of that while filming, to be really honest.
Well, and for the record, I have interviewed both Juan and Stephanie, and both of them have said nothing but wonderful things about you. They love you. They did not portray you that way. And I'm sure you've spoken to them. I'm sure you've gotten a ton of feedback. For anyone listening or watching, it was definitely, like you said, a crafty edit. And these things tend to happen in these shows.
Yeah.
But I thought it was so interesting in yours. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps as I say this. Like, I'm proud of you for being such a strong woman in that moment. And I don't think we should wilt and be apologetic for being strong women or competitive. I think we should push back. And so thank you, woman to woman. Thank you for that. And I hope that eventually you start getting more thank yous, because we need more women like you who unapologetically go out there and kick you know what. And by the way, we can totally curse on this podcast, but I tend to let you go first, just in case if you have kids.
Oh man, if I start, I mean, I've been in the kitchen for way too long. And I tell my parents, I'm working on that, and they're like, yeah, you need to be working on that. I remember trying so hard not to swear on the show, because I knew my nephew was going to watch. And so he, during the course of the restaurant, he would come work with us every Saturday. He helped, as 4 years old, he helped us remodel the restaurant. He speckled the walls, and I remember he and his mom did so much work helping us get that restaurant ready to go. And then he would come spend Saturdays. And near the end of the time, he was, firing things with me in the oven for service, and he was running expo, and he would lock the wait staff into dishes and the tables. But anyway, I knew he was going to watch. I really wanted to make him proud. And so, he's in the kitchen with us, so he knows every Saturday, if anybody, including cooks and service, we're in front of them, we have to put money in the money jar, right? And he's like, Annie, I think we got to come up with a code word for you. And it was like, okay, what do you think we should make it? And he's like, bloody pineapple. And I was like, bloody pineapple. I think I can work that into my vocabulary. And so there were so many times that I know I was muttering, other things besides bloody pineapple, because I would forget about the mic. Like, I would be in the competition. The camera doesn't seem to be on you. Nobody's in your face asking you a question. You're just working, and you're like, there's no hot water. Like, I can't believe we're doing all this chocolate work and trying to clean tools, and there's no hot water to clean our tool, but I need to clean my tool so I can do this practice. And so I'm boiling this hot water and pouring it on my tool and pretending to clean this, and there's no soap. And I'm definitely, I know I'm muttering because I'm a perfectionist, right? And so, but then, like, when the camera is on you, I'm editing myself, and I'm like, bloody pineapple. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh,
the things that come back.
I love that. And I don't know if you're aware, I did a show 10 years ago, and I had a very strict rule, because I had my daughter was very young at the time. I'm not going to drink on camera. And then, you get sat down with Marcus Samuelson, and he pours you a whiskey at 10 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, well, yeah, I have to now. So it's like you go in with this vision of, I'm going to mind my P's and Q's, and it just goes right out the window.
Well, you don't even I caught myself a couple times. There was I remember now, it was for the egg. And I had in my request asked for this specific gold luster because I wanted to gild the shell. And it kept never arriving. And I was running out of time. And I was like, why won't they? Because the ingredients came from the back. It's not like we got to fill a shopping cart. And it was in an area that because of COVID, we were unrestricted to. And I mean, there were a lot of parameters that they set into place to really keep everybody germ free. And I kept like, really, I was coming down to the wire. And then I think Devin, was this little heart, came out and told me that the woman in the back in control of it wouldn't release the gold powder. And I was like, why the F not? And he's like, well, it's not edible. I was like, do I look like an idiot? I know it's not edible. I'm putting it on the shell. And he's like, well, and I was so stressed because I was running out of time. And the whole idea with the story was that it was the golden egg. And I know I was dropping the F-bomb. I know it. And poor little Devin was just like, I know, chef. And then so he went, and I remember Armory coming over and saying, Chef, are you gonna, they don't want to release it. He uses this powder all the time, mind you. Okay, like we all know he uses it. And I said, Chef, I'm not gonna make you eat it. You're not gonna eat it. It's gonna be on the shell. I'm even gonna coat it so it doesn't get on your finger. And he's like, okay. And he made them release it. But like by then I was so close on time. I was like wanting to pull my hair out, like so stressed out. But yeah, I remember I definitely remember the F-bombs and Devin's face. Like, he's like, I know you're not an idiot. I'm just a messenger. And the thing is that you completely forget that you're mic'd and that the woman in the back is listening to you. It's like, well, stepped in that one.
Well, tell me more about, was the egg one of your least favorites, one of your favorites? I know it didn't come out the way you wanted it to.
No, it didn't come out the way I wanted it to, but I have made it many times successfully since. So I know that the idea had a lot of merit. And I just think, well, and actually, when we went to the little space in that they would film us eating, I was able to peel one. And I just think, obviously one of them had a little bit of the liner still in it attached to the chocolate, and there probably just wasn't enough time for it to deattach. So it still might be one of my favorites. Gosh, the lobster roll was a favorite just because I totally did that in honor of my restaurant. So I think even though it scored pretty well, it wasn't the best dessert one that I scored on out of the whole thing, but it's probably, those two are definitely the kind of like heart pinchers, But I think back on the showpieces a lot. I remember, I don't know if Stephanie or Juan mentioned that not all the challenges actually aired.
No.
Okay.
I've not heard that.
So there was some showpiece and some pastry that didn't air that were really fun too. With the showpiece, it's hard to kind of have a favorite. I learned a lot in the first couple, and things changed a little bit as well. So in the first episode, really, when they said your time started, it started, and we were like, okay, quickly come up with a windmill, right? There's three of us. We never worked with each other before. We have no idea what's going on. And then the next one where we did the dolphin, I remember we wasted so much time, almost like, I want to say it was 45 minutes to an hour in the beginning, trying to come up with a plan, which is how we we were really like, Stephanie, if you want to do the dolphin, we'll do the dolphin. We're down, because all three of us were staring at the clock, right? And so there's not, sometimes on some of these shows, like, what cake you're going to make, you have the little sketch already and stuff like that. That's not how this started, okay? Even with the pastry, it was like, here is going to be the challenge. Go, you have 2 hours to scale your ingredients. Boom. And I was like, half of us would go scale while you're scaling stuff, you're thinking, "Well, I'm gonna make a flashlight, like I'm gonna make a flashlight and I'm gonna use a water bottle and I'm gonna make this like there's no time to think, right? And the other half of the people went into interviews. But when you're interviewing, you're not thinking about your dessert because you're trying to pay attention to the question being asked of you, right? And so as soon as you come out of your interview, then you go in and you scale. As time went on, I think they must have had a conversation about these people need to deliver a little bit better, know? Because as it wore on, we were allowed a little bit of time before they started the clock to have a conversation, maybe pull up some pictures, like that windmill where I put the wings on backwards. I mean, I don't know. I didn't have a picture of a windmill. I was like, I couldn't believe that when he was like, "Oh, it's backwards," and I was just standing there like, "It is, it is, huh? How did I not see that?" And you don't see it because you're really what you're constantly watching is the clock.
Right, right. And can you share with us because you were in the finale, you were the runner-up.
Yeah.
Can you share with us what that last challenge was like? I know that you had helpers and then they pulled the helpers from you. What was that all like?
So, well, I loved the theme. I loved the theme. So, I knew it was weird because when they told us the theme, I don't remember how much time we got to have, but I could see the piece so clearly immediately. And the only other time that it worked like that for me was the outer space one. That showpiece, I knew instantly what it should look like and sketched it out and cut out the things and completely knew exactly where that needed to go. And the only other time during the competition that happened for me was the final piece as well. And I was stoked about my team and where we were at. And I did wonder if there was going to be, I call it the Project Runway twist, like they kind of thought there's going to be a Project Runway twist. It's season 1, so we'll see. But, so when they said, you got to stop, you got to choose one team member to stop in 10 minutes and who it's going to be. And that was really, to me, that was really hard. Mostly because you have come to really trust and respect all these people, even the people on Juan's team, so much throughout this process. And to have to cut one when they don't want to be cut either, I didn't get that feeling that anybody wanted to be cut. Was pretty difficult. And I just looked and had to assess where each person was at. Obviously, Thiago wasn't going to go anywhere because I had assigned him something that I was keeping a watch on the clock that if he continued to do what he was going to do, I could do everything else. And as soon as they made me eliminate one, and I eliminated Stephanie, which she's just like such an amazing, amazing, classy woman. She is just phenomenal. Then I thought to myself, they're going to trickle this down. And so then I was really watching where Amanda was at and thinking in my mind, I need to start adjusting because all the things that I had Stephanie planning to do, I'm now going to put the majority of that on my task list, which means I need to kind of see where in the process Amanda's at with her tasks. And then I just started working backwards in my mind and I started to edit a little bit. And I was just so nervous that they were going to take Thiago before the little dinos were done. Because I thought, how am I going to be able to finish those and finish everything else? Okay. And I think, honestly, I swear Anne-Marie was so invested in those little dinos too. And Thiago, he was just magnificent. He did such a beautiful job and he just was so focused on, and I just kept saying, he's like, Chevy, anything? I'm nope, just a little dinos. Don't even look over here. Just stay look over there. You just keep on doing what you're doing. It was really kind of cool. And then they went, when Stephanie and Amanda got sat out, they went over there. And I remember Tyresha and Cedric and Amanda and Stephanie, and they just started cheering. and they were cheering. I mean, they were cheering for their. There was no crossover of cheering for their teams, not too much. And then when it got down to just Juan and me, they all came out of the little glass holding room. I don't think they even cared what production said, and they were literally just cheering the two of us, and you could hear them, yelling for you, which was it was very cool. Right before that final, when they announced that it was just me and Juan doing the final piece, nobody knew that. That was a huge surprise. There were theories in the holding room that everybody was going to have to do their own piece. And that's kind of one of the theories that we had been floating about how somebody was going to win this thing. So the moment they announced that was the moment that we all found out. And I think that was a shock. Obviously, that's a shock to the everybody else who isn't in the final two. That's like what? Okay, so I guess I'm out and I'm not going to win. That's heavy. Like, that would be heavy if it had been me. It was heavy knowing that it was just going to be me and Juan anyway. Because I mean, honestly, by that point, I'd really taken myself out of any sort of contention to win this thing. I just didn't feel like the organic vibe was there or that I was a favorite or anything like that. So it took me by surprise. I knew my numbers were up there. But the vibe with Henri and everything like that, I just didn't think I was going to be in the finale.
Well, I was cheering you on. We were all cheering you on here at the house. And like I said, I just love a strong woman. I love the camaraderie you guys had. Did you make a lot of friends from the show? Are you still in contact with everyone?
Yeah, I'm in contact with mostly everyone. I congratulated Tyresha on some of the things that she has going on. She's got some amazing things happening in her life. And of course, Juan, he's definitely got a lot of moving things. I would say, I mean, I have conversations, a lot of messaging back and forth with Stephanie. I will always be rooting for her. Although I was just talking to Cedric the other day about his new show, about the Paris show. And then like Amanda and I were chatting the other day about a competition, and her judge of this competition she just did was my old boss. And so we were like chatting about that. And, I feel like probably the chatting the least has happened just as Daniel's gotten really busy, and which is really incredible. But I would say the first 2 years after filming, it was pretty steady. Lots of conversations about chocolate and stuff like that. So I think in this kind of situation, we made like real friends and colleagues that you can message about what do you think about this piece of equipment, or you can message and say, oh my god, your kid is adorable on his 8th birthday, like, where does he get that swag already, so it's all sorts of different kind of conversations. And I feel lucky because if I wouldn't have had this experience, I wouldn't have these kind of colleagues that I'll always have a really soft spot for, because they've been through it with you, and I think that this kind of provides a bonding that you only get through this, I think.
Oh yeah, I totally get it. And it seems that is one of the constants across all the different shows that I've interviewed people from, is you make these friendships with, it's very rare that you're in a room with people who are all as obsessed with desserts or chocolate, or in my case, food and cooking. And when you get in that room with those people, it's just such a bonding moment. And here I have the goosebumps again, but it's the constant across all of them, is that you make these lifelong friends. And I think that's so special and so wonderful, and a prize in and of itself. Even if you came in runner up, you've got some amazing friends and colleagues out of it. So I love that.
Yeah. And I mean, and not to mention through this experience, I learned things too, right? So I definitely think I'm better at showpiece now than I was when I went in, for sure. I mean, when we filmed, I hadn't touched chocolate in 6 years. Like, I mean, I wasn't doing any chocolate in my restaurant. I was making desserts and managing a bar and doing payroll and expo, and you know what I mean? So there were things that I learned that I had never done. the whole doing the mass in the Roboku and forming all this stuff, the most I'd ever done was a little twig branch for a flower in my life, right? So there you learn, not only did you learn from Amari, but you learn from each other. I watched, you know, I mean, I have to say I watched Juan with the dolphin, and I I watched Daniel with the lighthouse in the beginning when he did all the stuff on the side and all the putty. And I thought, I mean, I'd never seen it like that really, other than watching some videos with Marie, right? Um, so to see that in play, it made you instantly think how to go about that yourself, you know? So it was a lot about learning from the people you were partnered up with, as well as learning from the challenge and pushing yourself, and then the tidbits that you would get from Marie. So it there was a lot of really positive things that came about all of it.
I love that. Is there anything that you learned specifically that you're using on a regular basis in your current job?
Yeah, so I would say that the cold water buffing was kind of a game changer for me. I use that a lot now. I think the To be really honest, I think the biggest thing for me that I learned from all of it was just not to be scared. And when it comes to building showpiece, and most of my showpiece pedigree is self-taught, right? And you can think up and dream up these big things, and then you're like, how am I going to do that? And so then for me, I know in my style, I slow down, and maybe I don't just push forward with the project and then I kind of edit and it morphs and then it wasn't really the original. And now it's like there was no time to be afraid of anything. So you just kind of have to go. And I think that was probably the hugest thing that I really learned was don't allow those niggling voices in my own mind to keep me from trying to do the original idea. And if it doesn't work out, that's fine. You can morph as you go, but you think about how to get to the end result and then work backwards. And it was just kind of like it really was an epiphany for me, because I had seen that, I'd recognized that in myself before. I mean, how am I going to get my little minion to hold up my Easter basket? I'm not sure. You know what I mean? And now it's just, I'm going to do a 7-foot Yeti. And everybody in my little shop is like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it. It's going to be great. And they're like, how are you going to get that out the door? That's a great question. You know, let me measure the door. So that change in my brain from a creative outlet and doing these things that I didn't think that I really could do. And now I know that I can do them, or I can try to do them. And if I don't get it right this time, then on the next time, I'm going to get it closer to being right. And for that, I will be eternally grateful, getting through that little window and keeping it open.
I think that's so great. Well, I definitely wanted to give you a chance to also talk about what you're doing right now, where everyone can see your work right now and or taste your work. So, feel free to plug yourself as much as you want right now.
Okay. Well, so I am at a private club right now, but what I do, I do chocolates and confections. I have my Mellisa Root chocolates and confections that I run. I created a chocolate studio in my house, and I do online sales, and I do a lot of bespoke custom work as well. And I mean, I have a true love for chocolates and confection work, and I know that in my future I'm gonna have I will have a little brick and mortar again. I know it. I believe it in myself. I see it for myself. Right now I do a lot of online sales, and you can see me at melissaroot.com and on Instagram at Chef Mellisa Root, which my Instagram is pretty fun because you get to see a lot of the stuff that we do here with my team and in the private club, and we have a lot of fun here. A lot of pasty looking delights is what we like to call them.
Nice. And for anyone listening or watching, I will make sure to put all of the links to everything in the show notes. So if you're driving in the car, don't worry. We've got your back here. Mellisa, thank you so much for taking the time. There were so many more questions I wanted to ask you, and I wanted to talk about your recent trip. And so I think we're going to have you come back on the show at some point and chat some more if you're available.
That would be lovely. Yes, it was such a pleasure to talk to you. So thank you for having me.
Be sure to continue posting. I love seeing your Instagram. It's amazing. Everyone listening and watching, make sure to check out everything that Mellisa is doing and order some chocolates right away. Stay tuned to the next episode of Who's Reality Cooking. Thanks so much for listening and watching. Bye.